Hello and welcome to this episode of Evolution Now. I'm your host, Flora White, and I am thrilled to be here today with Sean O'Hara, host of Durable Entrepreneurs, a podcast available anywhere that you get your podcasts. Today, we're going to reveal common themes that Sean has learned when talking to dozens of founders and do's and don'ts that first-time founders should keep in mind when making their sales pitch for the first time. And with that, I want to welcome our guest, Sean O'Hara. Sean O'Hara, thank you so much for being here today on Evolution Now. You flew from Colorado. You're my first guest that's flown from the western part of the United States, so it's really special to me. It means a lot. And this is our first in-person meeting. We've been in touch for about 4 years. We know each other from the Jack Welch Management Institute, our MBA program, and now we're here together breathing the same air in the same room. It's so great to meet you in person, Sean.
I'm so excited to be here and thankful. And I just want to say initially, congratulations on everything that you're doing and what you're doing with Evolution Now. Very exciting.
Thank you.
And it is definitely my privilege to be sitting here with you today.
Well, you had me on your podcast, Durable Entrepreneurs, which I enjoyed so much. And just for everybody in the audience, can you tell us a little bit about what Durable Entrepreneurs talks about?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity for me to share that. So the Durable Entrepreneurs podcast is really aimed at helping early stage and aspiring entrepreneurs get through those first 5 most difficult years. At least statistically, more than half of all small businesses fail in their first 5 years. So what we're trying to do is get entrepreneurs from day 1 to year 6, when at least statistically, your odds of achieving durable long-term success in your business go up astronomically.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think, there's a lot of things that people are figuring out the hard way as they go. And part of what I'm trying to do is to help people by providing them with mentors that they can check in with literally every week that have been where they are right now, or maybe they're slogging through the mud with them right now, and share not just their inspirational story, but some of the actionable tools that they can provide to this audience that maybe they could do things differently or think about their things differently to help them and save them time bumping around figuring things out the hard way.
Have you heard any stories where somebody's heard something on your podcast? I know I've picked up a lot of tips along the way, and that has changed their trajectory or their approach to the way that they are launching their business?
Well, I have heard just from my guest specifically that after being on the podcast, that they have had the opportunity to connect with people that have heard them on the podcast, that came to them for guidance or came to them ultimately as clients.
Absolutely. Well, so you're not only helping entrepreneurs approach their business more effectively, but you're also helping them generate new business.
True, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So what sparked your idea to launch Durable Entrepreneurs?
Well, it was definitely kind of a slow spark, I would say. As you know, most of my career professionally has been in sales. So I have more than a couple decades in professional sales. And a few years ago, I started to think about what do I want to do like post-career wise? And for me, the idea of retirement being just discretionary leisure time for decades, that for me personally doesn't really resonate. Nothing wrong with that, but I have always wanted to build something and build something truly durable, actually. I've owned a couple businesses in my past with various degrees of success, but I felt like I had some unfinished business there. I also knew that I have a tendency to chase shiny objects and pivot from one idea to the next. And I knew that, effectively, I'm not a spring chicken, so I had to respect the time that I have on the clock in my career. And so I did something that maybe a lot of people don't do. I wanted to explore this possible path by going back to get my MBA, where, as you mentioned, where I had the good fortune of meeting you. That whole process was really 3 years of me just testing and evaluating different ideas. I would work with my instructors at Jack Welch. They knew what I was working on, and they would help me through that process. But really, over that 3-year period, I pivoted in a lot of directions, learned a lot about myself, as well as how to operate a business effectively and increase my odds of success. But at the end of it, my capstone project ended up being on a entrepreneur-focused media company. And the Durable Entrepreneurs podcast is really phase one of that initiative.
So you took an idea from the classroom, that was your capstone project, into the real world.
Yes.
And now you are doing it. And how long have you been producing the show?
Well, I spent probably after a year, after I finished school, digging in to develop this idea before I even moved, right? Which is probably a little bit excessive. But when I actually started about 6 months ago right now. And I've had the chance to interview since that launch date about 50 different entrepreneurs.
That's incredible. I mean, you're prolific. You're just going. And you said you're booked out through next year?
Yes, I'm booking out guests right now about 6 months out.
Wow. You've talked to over 50 guests now. You must see some patterns emerging. What themes or commonalities are you noticing with the entrepreneurs that you talk to?
This is a great question. I love this. And the thing that I find that's fascinating is I talk to people who they're driven by very different entrepreneurial visions. But there are some common themes. But just to give you an idea of some of the range of the entrepreneurs that I've talked to, I've had a founder on who talked about how she found $50,000 in grant funding to start an in-home daycare because she loves children, but she also wanted to be at home with her children, right? I talked with another founder who started a paid online community because she was working as a freelance writer, and she recognized that freelance writers were generally undervalued and undercompensated in the marketplace. And this whole paid online community was about solving that problem. She ran it for 10 years and sold that and realized a great exit there, and that helped fund her retirement actually. And it's a working retirement for her. But anyway, in addition to that, I've had a founder on who bought his company before the company was actually right before it was going to go into bankruptcy, got the money together and ended up selling that company for 9 figures like 20 years later. And it was an aerospace parts manufacturer, right? Had the opportunity to bring you on so that you could share your journey in television and your career and what you learned and how that actually applies to people who are trying to build their personal brands, which obviously I was a big fan of that episode because you're helping me with a lot of those things right now.
My pleasure.
And I've spoken with another guy who he had a personal experience and led him to start a bakery for people with food sensitivity. So all of these things seem like they're so different, right? But you're right that there are some very common themes that I hear resurface with all these people with different backgrounds. One of them is definitely that these people have found a way to thread the needle in their business model and what they're passionate about, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you hear this dilemma of, you want to do something you're passionate about, but what does the market really reward? And as if that's an either or proposition. And I found that if you're really thoughtful about it, it doesn't have to be that. You can follow your passion as a business idea, but you may have to think about it in a way that's not the obvious first idea. So, and the other thing that I found related to that passion is that obviously it's a tough road. And that is why people don't make it through their first 5 years so often, right? And so to get through there, it requires a certain relentlessness. And that relentlessness, the fuel for that typically is that passion piece of it. I'm on a mission to bring something to the world here. Another great example of that, I was interviewing somebody this week. She told me that she had been, full-grown adult, had been out of the house for years, and she was building her company. And she was at this impasse where she had to figure out how to grow because she had to touch everything and she needed a team, but she didn't have the money. So she sold her house as a full-grown adult, moved back in with her mother, right?
Wow.
In order to get the money. And the business actually was a huge success over time.
What type of business was that? I'm curious.
It's an accounting firm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So, but that type of relentlessness, but in addition to the passion which feeds me, and the relentlessness that's required to get through it. I find that people also have to have a deep conviction, or they seem to have a deep conviction about, I really do truly, sincerely want to have a positive, meaningful impact in the lives of other people. Those are three things that across all those different people I described, I would say that's common.
Well, and I think that's why you and I connect so well, because at Evolution Content, we talk about mission, values, and purpose. And that's the cornerstone for every business owner's communication strategy that we design, because we're all on a mission. We're here for a reason, and we're here to do it.
Yes.
And if it were easy, everyone else would do it, right?
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
So we're talking about entrepreneurs. Nowadays, I think half the GDP is funded by small, medium-sized enterprises in the United States. And Jack Welch, to go back to a mentor of ours for our MBA program, was a juggernaut in the business world. He was the chairman of General Electric, and he really believed in capitalism at all costs, right? In a great way.
Yes.
And I mean, would you say it differently?
No, I agree 100% that he was definitely a capitalist. He led a multinational corporation to tremendous success, and was named manager of the century for the 20th century by Time magazine. There are some things that, even though he worked in a very big business world, obviously, with a company like General Electric and leading that team, there are a lot of things that he talked about when we were in that program that I feel like are very relevant to being a successful entrepreneur. And some of the things that really stuck with me actually were in the first class that I took, which was Leadership in the 21st Century. He really talked a lot about treating people well. That doesn't mean that you don't have to make tough decisions sometimes that you don't want to make. But one of the things that he really emphasized was the need to treat people with dignity and respect, and to be very candid with people.
Candor was a big
big
piece of his ideology. And I want to tell the audience, Jack Welch was alive during our program, and he would get on Zooms. We were on Zooms with Jack Welch during this program.
Yeah. It was an amazing experience. That if anybody's considering an MBA program, I would say definitely at least look at it, because one of the things that I liked, it really aligned with what I was trying to accomplish too, was that the entire faculty are tenured business professionals, many of them C-suite executives. Mm-hmm. And so they were great, not just instructors, but mentors as well. Going back to the Jack Welch thing, I feel like with that whole dignity, respect, treating people with dignity, respect, and candor being part of that, being willing to have difficult conversations with people so people aren't blindsided when they get bad news, so people know exactly where they stand at all times. But those things and the way that you treat people, that really creates the culture of an organization. And as an entrepreneur, you have a very unique opportunity. You have a blank piece of paper, and you can create your culture on that paper. And so the culture is going to happen. If you create it, good for you. But if you don't, it doesn't mean you don't have a culture. It means each person in your organization individually is creating the culture. So I feel like keeping those things in mind about how you treat people, really, you want to have the right people on the team, but you want them to be very enthusiastic about what it is that they're committing their time and their careers to. And so a lot of those takeaways from Jack Welch about that specifically. Another one, celebrating success. But that's too is about the way that you treat people, right? So I feel like even though he worked on a much bigger scale, they're very relevant ideas for an early stage entrepreneur.
So Sean, as you mentioned, you have a few decades of professional sales experience. What would you say to entrepreneurs, many of whom are not salespeople naturally? You know, they might have a good idea, but they don't know how to present it. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs trying to sell their product or service?
That's a great question. And there's a couple thoughts I have right away. One is, if you really don't have if it really is not aligned with who you are, just like as you're building any enterprise, there are some things that ultimately you want to give it to that person who has a greater competency, right? Mm-hmm. However, starting out, there's a good chance as a founder, you are going to have to be selling at some point, right? And so I feel like the challenge that a lot of people have is the way that they perceive sales. And they think of kind of the worst, most uncomfortable sales experience. They think
Right.
of people who are pushy, people who are manipulative, right? I've found over time that that is absolutely the worst way to approach selling, right? And if your prospect feels like you're walking them through your sales process, that's probably not going to go well anyway. While you have to have a roadmap for sure, I do feel like the paradigm shift is, as a founder, do you believe that you have something of value that you have created to bring to the world? Right? And if you do, which you must, right? If you're in this position, you must have that belief. So it's really just about finding the people that you can help, right? And
Finding the people that you can help.
yep, that's 100% of what in my decades. That's what a lot of everything I do has distilled down to. I get up every day and I'm trying to find people that I can help, find out how I can help them, and if I can't, that's okay, because there's somebody else that I can. So it's really more about understanding the person's world that you're talking to and really trying to connect the dots in a way that makes it obvious, right? Do I have something here for you? Is this going to be of value to you? And if not, that's okay.
Right. And when we're helping people, it feels good. It
Yes.
doesn't feel like I'm coming to you hat in hand. I'm a beggar or I'm trying to convince you, right? That makes it very one-sided.
Yes.
If you're helping someone and they want to be helped, then you have a fit.
Yes, absolutely. And the great thing about that is when you find that person, and you will find them. When you find these people, not only are they becoming your customer, they are thankful that they're your customer because they're engaging with you because you have a solution that is making their life better.
Right. You make their life better.
Yes. So I think that for a founder, forget about the slick selling stuff, right? Initially, just go out and have conversations with people and see how you can help improve their lives.
What do you think about the idea, the common thinking that if you want to make a lot of money, sell a few high ticket items to people who are willing to make a big investment versus many products or services that are low cost to many people?
Yeah, I believe that's a personal decision for a founder, and both approaches obviously can be very valid. There is a trend now toward high ticket offer. You hear it quite a bit, and I recently had a guest on my show who actually went the complete opposite route, and her thought was twofold. One, reaching more people with a low ticket offer. She defined herself as being in the low ticket offer space, and she said that creates a lower barrier to entry for people to participate, one, but also it was giving her the opportunity to impact the lives of more people, and that she really wanted to touch as many people as she could with her business. So I feel like the most important thing is really to know clearly where you stand there. But while there is a big trend right now toward high ticket offer, I do feel like there's still opportunity in the opposite in that world, which is low ticket offer.
And you don't think that low ticket offers are perceived as low value necessarily? Do we want to debunk that myth?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be low value, but you bring up a great point, though. You have to know your value, and you have to know how to price your value. And certainly, if you are low ticket and your thought process is that really what you're doing is you are just undercutting on price. And if that's your whole value proposition, I definitely feel like you are at risk because somebody will ultimately undercut you as well. That's inevitable. But a low ticket offer could be something that does make business sense, that provides value at a lower price point for the customer.
And it could be a lead product into a larger offering, right?
Yes, that's true too.
So, of course, every chapter has some failures. I've encountered them myself. We all have. Is there a failure or a challenge that has taught you something that you want to share here on the show?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, I've owned several businesses in my past, and one of them that I took a major lesson away from. Let me start out by saying it was a failure, total failure. And of course, a lot of times that's you learn the most by losing, unfortunately. But I took a great lesson away from this. I started a Red Bull vending machine business, And my wife was a victim in here too,
I have not
because
heard this story, by the way.
so she actually took care of everything with inventorying and taking the money out of the machines and all that stuff. But anyway, the lesson that I took from this was, one, I went all in, and I didn't really rigorously test the idea, and didn't even really take a common sense approach to it. I went out of the chute and I invested in not one or two, but 10 Red Bull machines, having no experience in this business at all. And if I had a way, I guess I could summarize why I even would do that, it was hubris. It was for sure hubris, because I felt like that I was so good at selling that this was going to be a piece of cake. I would bring these machines home, put them in my garage, and go out and start talking to people, and they would be all over the place.
So these are vending machines that sell the drink Red Bull, right? Okay.
Yep. The vending machine just looked like a giant Red Bull can, and that was the only thing that would go in it. And it was early on in the Red Bull brand as well. However, like I said, I felt like because I had been successful selling, that I could be successful selling this. And the truth is that there was no overlap in these business environments that I had been working in. There was no commonality between the customers and the people who were the decision makers. And I really had confirmation bias as I was going through this process of evaluating everything and only seeing the green lights and none of the potential obstacles. And right away, it became obvious to me after I made this investment that I am in deep water and I'm not really prepared for this. And ultimately I ended up selling them. But I would say my major lesson there, and I've had other entrepreneurs on my show share this with me as well. I had a restaurateur, for example, who had 7 different restaurants that he opened, but opened a couple of them thinking that he had the magic touch. And the variables in these other restaurants, the location, the demographic, all of these things were different, but he felt like he had the magic touch. I can do this. And I feel like that is a very detrimental thought process, and that you almost have to start everything like you've never done it before.
With a beginner's mindset.
Yes, with a beginner's mindset. That's perfect. So that was a lesson that I learned that was rather costly, but hey, it was like my tuition for learning about hubris.
And did you sell them at a loss?
Yeah, a very steep loss.
A very steep loss. Okay,
yes.
But at least somebody else bought them.
Yes. Yes. Somebody who was in the vending machine business, however.
So, I mean, being an entrepreneur, you have to be delusionally confident, but also, like you said, you have to have a beginner's mindset. You have to approach things knowing what you don't know and be willing to be a beginner and totally start over.
Yes, and that makes me think of yet another guest I had who, when I asked about his advice for early stage entrepreneurs, he said, test your business model. Test it and test it and test it and test it again and again and again. And the example he uses, a lot of people, they love dogs. So they want to open a pet grooming business. And he's like, okay, your love of dogs may not be the pet grooming business. There may be a way for you to bring that love of dogs into the marketplace in a viable business, but you can't be in love with your idea of being in the dog grooming business. And you have to really vet that before you actually make that investment where your livelihood is tied to it. So you're right. You have to be somewhat delusional, but you also have to increase your odds of success by being very, very rigorous in your homework before you even start.
Absolutely. Would you say that's the biggest lesson that you've taken away from all of your guests, Sean? Are there any other themes, share with people thinking about starting their own business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've learned so much, and I learn like literally every day when I'm talking to people. But I feel like that is one theme, you're right, that everybody should be very, very diligent about testing your idea very rigorously and scale in a way that really makes sense for you, to where you can go down this path and not end up being one of the 50% that fails in their first 5 years, looking back saying, I wish I would have known this. especially when it ends up being maybe something that you could have if you had done your homework.
Yeah. And again, failure is not bad. It's inevitable. Just fail fast, right?
Yes.
Fail fast and iterate and keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You've talked to a lot of founders, and I bet there are times where you wish you could help them with their sales. You know, you can hear the problem, but it's not always the right forum to share that feedback. I want to hear it.
Okay.
What are some do's and don'ts that you would give to founders when they're trying to sell their product? Let's start with the don'ts.
Okay. This is a great question because so many founders get really excited about what they're building and what they're bringing to the marketplace. And it's very easy to just want to put that out into the world and tell everybody and share your enthusiasm. And that leads to what is known as show up and throw up. And people who are prospects, that they don't respond to that, right? You need to, that would be the don't. Know your product, be the expert in your product, because you have to be able to present this in a way that makes sense to the customer. So you absolutely have to be the expert in the product, but do not just show up and throw up. And that would be a don't. And then the do, which is directly correlated to that, would be, this goes back to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen Covey talks about seek first to understand and then be understood. So do ask open-ended questions. Do not ask questions that can be answered with a single word, right? And seek first to understand what the challenges are, and then present whatever you want to share about your product or your service offering in the context of how it can serve that customer, but only after you feel like you very, very clearly understand their world and how you may be able to help them. If you find that you are talking more than you're listening, things are not going well. You may not realize it, but things are not going well. So seek first to understand, then be understood.
I love that. And that's a quantifiable metric. If you're talking more than you're listening, something's off.
Yes, definitely.
That's great. And I had never heard show up to throw up.
Okay.
Show up and throw up.
Yeah.
What do you say, Sean, to aspiring entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting their business?
Well, one, I would seriously, not being self-promoting here, I would say please listen to the podcast, Durable Entrepreneurs, because...
Where can we find it?
Pretty much everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, any place you're looking for your podcast, you'll find it there. But this is exactly what I'm trying to do. I personally am on a mission to help people elevate their own opportunities in their own life, in their own quality of life, by thinking about how they can provide something of value to other people, to society, maybe even to the entire world. So if you're starting down this road, don't do it alone. The podcast is something that can help, but certainly having mentors in your corner as well will be a big help.
Elon Musk recently said that in the future, work will be optional. What do you think about that as somebody who's talking to entrepreneurs who are pursuing their passion? Maybe it doesn't feel like work. Maybe it's just something that they love to do that happens to sustain them. Do you think work will be optional in the future?
I hope not. I can see the case and how that could actually unfold. We could talk about this for an entire episode, I am sure. I'm nervous about that, truly. I really am, because I feel like as humans, productivity cannot be optional, right? I feel like that there is something to us making a difference, to us contributing, to us being tested and growing. And truly, without work and being productive, what is there?
You lose purpose.
You lose purpose. So it's going to be very challenging. The upside of this is that I feel like in the near future, a trend of where a lot of large corporations that are now starting to say that they're going to be able to justify the huge investments that they've made in AI with better ROI. And what that is really is placing people with technology. So for entrepreneurs and people who are aspiring entrepreneurs, that represents an opportunity, because while large corporations may be reducing their staffing levels because of the investments that they're making in AI, I do believe that more people should gravitate toward their own path for that reason, but also to create a meaningful life for themselves as well. So I do see an explosion of entrepreneurship as a result of the explosion of AI.
Yeah, reduction in workforce results in people going out and pursuing their own passions and figuring out what they would do, whether an employer hired them or not.
Yes, yes. We're going to all be, I think there's going to be a lot more people thinking about how they can create their own destiny instead of working for somebody else.
That's a great note to end on. I always like to end on a personal note.
Yes.
So, you're a high performer, you're doing a lot from your sales job during the day to your thriving podcast on other hours during your day. How do you balance your time? Let's start with the morning. Just how do you wake up and what do you do in the morning?
Okay. So I'm not sure anybody wants to emulate my morning routine, actually. I would say the world that I'm living in right now, and it's seasonal. I don't see this as being sustainable, but this is my morning. I wake up and I start working. That's pretty much it. And it's a little bit out of necessity of the spot that I'm in right now, but I get up, I do everything that everybody does to get ready for their day, and then I start working. So I'll get up at 5 something in the morning, and at 8 o'clock, I'm moving on to my sales role, and I've got to give that 100% all day for a lot of obvious reasons. So when I get up in the morning, I get up, maybe I get coffee, but a lot of times I get out of bed, get ready, I go right into my office, and every minute I'm focused on getting something done. So it's
For the podcast.
For the podcast, yes. So I have the podcast in the morning, and I have that business in the evenings as well.
And you've said to me that doing something that you love so much, Durable Entrepreneurs, fuels you to be able to show up even stronger during your 9 to 5. Is that true?
Oh yeah, that's very true. Right, because it is very gratifying to me personally, this journey that I'm on and what I know that I'm building, what I see in the future. It really affects your mindset across the board and the way that you engage everything. And so, yeah, I do show up more energized during my workday as well because of what I'm doing here.
It just goes to show that when you're living through your purpose, it has a halo effect in a positive way to everything that you're doing.
Yes, I agree 100%. Passion piece.
Yeah. So, Sean, we talk about your morning routine. Tell us a little bit about how you wind down after a full day of work.
Oh, thanks for asking that question, because I think this is kind of like an anchor for me, actually. I'm a Catholic, and prayer is a really important part of my life. And every day, at the end of the day, as I'm falling asleep, I always say a prayer of thankfulness. And I think the most powerful part of this is that I try to be very, very specific, thinking about that day and all of the things that happened that day that I am truly thankful for. And just falling asleep in that mindset, in that prayer, it really does something for me personally to re-energize me to get up the next day and get after it again.
So that's how you sustain your energy. You bring that energy into the next morning.
Yes.
I'm going to try that tonight and see how I wake up tomorrow morning. Thank you, Sean, so much for being here on Evolution Now and coming all the way from Colorado. I can't wait for our next collaboration.
Yes.
And I hope you come back on the show again.
I would love to. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And that concludes this episode of Evolution Now. Join us next week.